Today we're looking at stash wide receivers. Wide receivers who are going to be hanging out on the end of your bench. Some of these guys you want to pick up. Some of these guys you don't want to pick up, but you're thinking about it. We're going to look at some of these guys today, but before we dig in, you need to click that subscribe button right now. We're helping you build your dynasty teams every single day, player by player, with trades, stash plays, the rookie draft, player profiles. It's all right here. Click that button. Stop missing out. So the theme today is wide receivers, deep plays, guys to look at. Not all of these guys are putting stamps on. We're going to rebuttal them as well. That being said, we got a wide receiver to talk about here, Jalen Tolbert. Jalen Tolbert's cheap at 96. Off the board, keep trade cut, ADP's cheap. He's down there. He is tanked. He is rock bottom. And when Brandon Cooks came back, it was like lights out for him. He ain't coming back. So the thing about Jalen Tolbert, he was a good workout warrior in training camp. He changed to number 1 this year, and he had a little bit of drift there, so you got a good imagination to him. And we had some games where he had 5+ targets. So when you're looking at a wide receiver here, and you're in a deeper league, and you got him on the back end of your roster, and you're looking for a guy that can give you a splash game here or there, possibly. Do I like him as a long-term asset? No, I don't think it's really going to ever turn it around. I think you're going to get seasons like this where you're going to get the occasional wide receiver 1 week, wide receiver 2 game. You're going to get 4, 5, 6 targets here and there, handful of targets there, no targets there type of deal. Being on the field for a little bit, getting a little bit type of deal. But at wide receiver 96, and if you're playing the matchups week to week, and with Dak back, with that infusion, and this offense was not the same all year. The thing is, Jalen Tolbert could be a sneaky ad for you because he's cheap. The sunk cost is nothing. You can probably pick him up. If not, you can add him in on a trade as a throw-in in another deal. That's what I would pay. I would pay free. Whatever that costs, free is the answer. Free is the answer for Jalen Tolbert. But another guy to look at on the back end of your roster here, I look for this chart to shoot up 5 to 10 spots once we get to training camp. We're going to get those highlights, those clips, him making a few catches in training camp, and a few people are going to draft him a little bit, and a few people are going to be saying, hey, maybe Jalen Tolbert. Malachi Corley is getting tanked by the market right now, and he's cheap to get right now, according to this. Probably more liquid, but also very cheap. He did nothing last year. Devontae Adams gone, more than likely. Aaron Rodgers is gone. This is going to be a totally different team. They're going to be moving things around. There's going to be opportunity through the chaos, and if we can capture that, remember he's the Yak King. Steve Smith loved this guy. Everybody told me that Steve Smith loved this guy, and he is a good Yak guy. Good at getting short targets and getting you a little bit after the catch. But he's so cheap. He's cheaper than Jalen Tolbert, theoretically, but kind of sort of not really on the market. That being said, I like young wide receivers with potential upside. There's some here with the Jets. Garrett Wilson's going to get all the targets. The running backs are going to get the work. Whether it's Breece Hall there or if he's not healthy, it's going to be the tandem after him. Malachi Corley, through the chaos, might be a sneaky guy getting some opportunity. He's pennies on the dollar and a guy to hold just in case. And you see things through training camp. It's also a weak wide receiver class. I don't see the Jets bringing in too much competition, and too much competition that's going to really push him. Darius Slayton, free agent in this class. The market's taking a huge dump on him. Huge diaper baby dump on Darius Slayton right now. We're in free agency. But the one thing we look at game to game in redraft when we're looking for waiver wire targets are guys getting deep targets downfield and air yards. Whatever team that picks him up, have in mind that he's a wide receiver that's going to stretch the field. They're going to toss him some deep targets here and there. He's probably going to have some moments if he's on the field where the deep ball comes, he brings it in. More like a splash volatile option, but wide receiver 122. At this age, of course, not a long-term asset, but if you're trying to patch things together, if you're a win-now team and you're trying to figure things out on the back end of your roster at wide receiver, watch where he lands. Watch what quarterback he goes to. Say we get paired up with Trevor Lawrence, who likes to push it downfield, and we're playing next to Brian Thomas Jr. There's going to be a game or two he splashes. Pretty much anywhere, there's a chance a game or two he splashes. He can really help out a lot of teams because his skill set of stretching the field isn't like something all wide receivers have. He's also got good length on him. There's some good opportunity left. It ain't going to be for a long time. It's going to be for a fun time, and it's going to be volatile, and you're going to hate that. But as like your wide receiver, 6, 7, 8, 9, it's okay, especially at free. Curtis Samuel, market's taking a huge dump on him. He was injured throughout the season. Started off the season with a toe injury. Then we had like a shoulder injury, and we were just banged up. Short targets, short volume. See what can happen going into year 2. See what's happening with him in training camp. He's free right now. The market was heavy for him. Wide receiver 64 going into the season. He's a Bill. Josh Allen, yada, yada, yada. We're going into another year with the Bills. Full training camp and everything else. We might get more acclimated with the team. He's free and a guy that can hang out on your roster. If something better comes along, then hey, you can drop him and do that, or throw him away, or trade him as a throw-in for another deal, or whatever you want to do. But he's cheap. The market hates him right now. And again, he finished weak, so the market's going to start it off weak to start the season, to start the 2025 year. That being said, when we're looking at a guy here to average 4.6 points per game, people look at that, but they don't take out the full context of what happened here. Injured, riddled season here in 2024. There's competition in the offense. We do not have a strong rookie class at wide receiver, so they're probably going to have to patch things up in free agency or burn a first-round pick because they're going to be drafting late in a lot of these picks, and the talent's going to dwindle round to round very rapidly at the wide receiver spot. Malik Washington, we love this guy. Wide receiver 86. He gets a lot of short targets. The ADOT's not too high. We're starting to turn on at the end of the season. Upside for days. Very productive at Virginia, and we turned it on at the Shrine game. And that really was the moment where the market came along to him. We're watching him at Miami, faster paced offense. Tua starting the season healthy. We got another training camp under our belts. We're pretty much free on the market. Or if you had him drafted, I would hold him through the offseason at least. I would hold him through the middle of the season, see what happens. See what happens when it comes to snap counts, routes, and everything else. But we were getting volume back in the season. We have some upside. And this offense is straight up upside, especially if we can gel in the summer. Luke McCaffrey, I do not like the prospect profile. I'm not really in on Luke McCaffrey, but how can I argue against myself here? I like Jaden Daniels. And this team is in need of a wide receiver. This is a wide receiver who is a developmental prospect. What if we do turn it on in training camp? What if I'm wrong there and he just gets better and becomes a good route runner? He gets short targets here and there, and there's a few games out of the season where he racks up targets and gets you some scoring here and gives you better than wide receiver 84 production, maybe like wide receiver 40 to 50 range. Could be a good guy to play the lineups with at the end of your bench. Maybe that happens. I don't like him as a prospect. I never did, and I probably won't, but fighting bias here, that could happen. I like this offense. I like Jaden Daniels. I like how he's cooking. Luke McCaffrey going into year 2. There's room for improvement. I do like the price tag. I could dance with that in startup drafts if the right guys aren't there. And I could definitely be doing that. Luke McCaffrey's a guy to look at the end of your bench. Jordan Whittington. He's a Sean McVay guy. And he could be getting the Kyron Williams treatment. He could be getting that going into next year. Cooper Kupp, more than likely gone unless something happens where he stays contract-wise. I believe Jordan Whittington, his stock is going to bounce back up a little bit, and it has. It has since the news, up to wide receiver 79. People are starting to get interested in him. But he's going to get Sean McVay privilege in training camp. Will they bring in another wide receiver? They could do that. But the wide receiver class in free agency is pretty weak. The wide receiver draft class is pretty weak. However, he's a later round option. The talent in the middle rounds could push him a little bit in training camp. We have a vast injury history throughout his career. But when you look at the price tag here, he's so cheap. And I can definitely see a pathway to opportunity. Jacob Cowling's in a situation here with Deebo Samuel probably gone that he might walk into some workload. Ricky Pearsall, Brandon Ayuk, Jacob Cowling is a player that broke out with 2 different collegiate programs, fell in the draft a bit, but has the prospect profile of a late-round pick that could turn it on later on in his career. The odds of a third wide receiver on this team doing something, especially when you can talk about Jennings as well, I did not say his name, is not very good. So a fourth wide receiver, third wide receiver, Jacob Cowing here. But he's 119, 100-something ADP. He's down there. He's an afterthought. He's so cheap. But if things turn around, if we start gelling in training camp, and maybe it's this year or next year, he's a cheap chip to have on the back end of your roster. And I don't see many wide receivers in this class really pushing him off the roster. So he's going to get an opportunity on this team. He's going to get an opportunity through training camp. You can hold through training camp, see what happens, see how you like the depth chart. And these wide receivers, Ricky Pearsall had some injuries, Brandon Ayuk had some injuries. Maybe opportunities open up through attrition. Jermaine Burton, the slot machine dandy. Jermaine Burton's coming up here. The thing about him, he's been tanking. He's been tanking huge, and he did not suit up those final games. They did not let him on the bus. They did not let Jermaine Burton get his opportunity. And the reason why is because he's been messing around. He also had a weird incident with his apartment as well. But we're so cheap that we can probably get back in there just to see what happens. You can be out, that's cool, because we're going to talk about a lot of guys. And we're going to talk about more guys next week. So you can be out, it doesn't matter. Price tag is interesting. Talent's okay. I thought he would have been a great buy later in the draft. The Bengals kind of paid up for him. The reason why he went so early to the Bengals is he's fast off the line of scrimmage with a good release package, good at stretching the field. However, he's a little bit of a head case. We heard that through college. That might end him. That might tank his dynasty stock to 0. His stock right now is very cheap if you want to swoop on in. Ray McCloud, another season with the Falcons. We got Michael Penix there as like the wide receiver 3-4 in the passing game. Wide receiver 120. If you're looking for a patch-up piece here to get you moving through the season, look at what he did last year. 8.5 points per game, but he was spotty with good production here. A lot of wide receiver 3 weeks, but if you look at him as cheap double-digit scoring weeks, from that perspective, you might be interested. You might be interested with him as your last wide receiver, or you take a lottery ticket shots, or you take a lottery ticket shot on something that might score for you with Ray McCloud on the short term. Older, veteran wide receiver, doing okay with the Falcons here last year, was productive in spurts, earned his opportunity. You can definitely hold him through training camp to make sure he holds his job. Maybe you want to move him around or something like that. But if you're a win-now team, you're looking for spotty production, this might be something that could help you. Wide receiver 120 for some leagues, that might be too deep, but this could be a wide receiver that helps you. Brendan Rice, wide receiver 134. Okay production profile, not the most twitched up wide receiver. This team's looking for more depth at the wide receiver position. We're locked in with Ladd McConkey. We're locked in kinda with Quentin Johnston. So what are we doing here? What are we really doing here talking about Brendan Rice? This team's probably going to bring in another pass catcher in the draft. Probably at tight end if the right player falls in the first round, like a Colston Loveland. However, you look at Brendan Rice, a wide receiver 134. There's no sunk cost here. There wasn't ever. You weren't paying up for him. If he gets his opportunity, runs with it, good. I would see him through training camp to see what happens. He may not even be on the team come the start of the season. If he is, then I'm watching snap counts, I'm watching routes ran, and if you want to flip him or dump him for something else off the waiver wire during that time, I think you got the liberty to do so right now. The market's saying, hey, that's what we think as well. That's what that number says. But he's cheap, he's free, and if you like him last year, you might be able to get him a lot cheaper right now. Tyler Lockett, we either hitting free agency or we're not. But if you're looking for a cheap wide receiver that can get you some volatile play, some volatile production, Jack Smith-Njigba hit last year, and maybe they move on from Lockett and he hits the market. We are an older wide receiver, so you're not looking at this as a long-term lottery ticket that could go off. You're looking at this as a chance for spotty production. So you might be able to get him on the free, and maybe as a throw-in a much larger deal. And if you get that, what you're getting is a wide receiver that could give you volatile production. That's a good route runner that can create separation, that might be able to get deep targets downfield and get a good ADOT per game, air yards per game, or whatever you want to call that. Wide receiver 126. He's free. He might even end up on the waiver wire soon, as people have to make some cuts, really depending on what's going on. I'm not saying to go out and get him. I think the risk here is you get nothing and a big goose egg this year. That is a huge risk. But the risk is minimal at this price tag. But that's versus the opportunity cost of having a young wide receiver that you can hoard for a couple years and dump after 2028. So it's whatever you want to do. But Tyler Lockett, if I'm a team that's pushing for the playoffs, I need an older player that when they get to a new destination, or if he's on the field this year for the Seahawks, that can get me some production that I can throw in and just close my eyes and pray to the fantasy gods when I'm in a bind. That's probably a wide receiver you want to. Those are the stash wide receivers we're looking at today. Let me know who you're stashing in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. Thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.